there's a thing where people pay to listen to weird sounds, like people chewing and these kind of things. Have you heard of that?
Pay to listen to that?
Yeah, they they like to
They
like these
have,
kind of
that's a
noises.
fetish. That's
Yeah,
a
this kind of
fetish. That's crazy.
Hi everybody and welcome back to our discussion on things to consider on my channel Bees Views. I'm Veronic and this is Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Sutton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I have been one approximately 20 years, and I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, but I'm also licensed in Missouri. And I look forward to the opportunity to have these discussions with Veronic about different things and how they impact relationships and who we are. And so I am well versed on many topics, so I'm looking forward to this dialogue today. Thank you.
So I think we were going to do two things. We're going to touch on how we could accept persons for being different and even though we don't agree with the way they do things and what we do, and I'm speaking of persons close to us. And what was the other thing you said we do?
And we talked a little bit about the impact of how we look at people's flaws. One thing I think is going to be beneficial with both discussions is those differences and flaws are going to be a lot easier to manage when we reframe them and not see them from a negative perspective. So that's what I want to bring to the conversation today.
Okay, well, that actually sounds good. We could start there. So, okay, you said reframing. So I'm guessing that's some kind of therapeutic thing.
Yes, it is something that is very common in the therapeutic field that I work in. And one of the things about reframing is basically, think of the phrase flip the switch or flip the script. You're flipping, you're turning things over. So a lot of times you can take something that has a very negative connotation, a negative perspective, and then flip it to make it either more acceptable, more palatable, something that you can more readily accept and receive. Now, we see that sometimes with people use the use of the N word. So I'm not speaking necessarily in that perspective, but let's just say in terms of flaws. You know, we say in a relationship, we may really hate that someone's not really clean. They don't do things how we do. All the kind of things that get at us. And so one of the things is like, if you focus on that and that flaw and that thing that aggravates you, you're going to typically internally find yourself at odds with that person. And what I also always say to people is our private thoughts about people come out in our interactions. And so reframing allows us to sit back and look at things differently. I'll give you another quick example, which is probably better. When we hear the phrase, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. We know a lot of people, particularly in the field I work in, deal with trauma, and they've had, many traumatic things happen. And so one of the ways people try to help folk deal with their traumas by saying, well, it didn't kill you, it made you better. But in some regards, we don't really fully acknowledge the impact of that trauma, and we dismiss it. And so we look at it differently, like, okay, this did not kill you, but we do recognize that it changed you in a way that causes you to operate very differently, and more is required of you. So it's like taking something that's not necessarily favorable and just trying to reframe it to have a better understanding, and also not to put so much weight of responsibility on the person who was on the receiving end of that unfavorable thing. Reframing really is quite effective, and it's definitely, I think, beneficial for relationships. We've got to be able to look at those differences in a more productive way, and we have to find a way to not be so irritated with what we have labeled a flaw, which may not really be a flaw. It can just be something we don't particularly care for. Reframing is important.
Okay, so I have three questions. When do we need to reframe? What tools can we use to reframe, and how do we know that our reframing works?
Okay. When? Well, one of the things is, particularly whether it's an intimate relationship or just family relationship or just interactions, even if they're work relationships, one of the things is that from a therapeutic perspective, what you want to be able to do is reframing. When would you do it? When you think that there is a need for you to look at something differently, whether it's a situation particular thought that you're having about someone, or a particular feeling you've had in response to something that has been said to you by someone else. So what I was trying to emphasize before is pay close attention to your emotional response to what's being said to you. That is a good indication that maybe I need to look at this from a different perspective versus just getting pissed and getting angry and having an attitude. But sometimes we have a very strong visceral response to something, and it's not necessarily because what was said is wrong. Maybe something about it we don't like, we didn't appreciate it, and it hit us in a place that's relevant. So that's one way to know, when do I think I should do it? Pay close attention to how strongly you respond. And then you said, I think you asked me then, what are some of the tools? Well, one of the first things is that you want to recall what was said to you, because with reframing, you want to try to challenge any assumptions or automatic thoughts you've had in your mind about what was said. Because sometimes we hear things from people and we are immediately defensive. We think it's about us, or there's some indication we can see ourselves in what was said, but we don't want to acknowledge it. So we have these automatic thoughts. So one of the things is, the first tool is you've got to examine your own thoughts about what was said to you, or what was done, or the behavior, whatever that thing is, that situation that bothers you. Okay. And so those are your private thoughts, like, what did I think? Well, I didn't appreciate that, or they were trying to stab me. They were trying to be slick. They were trying to be smart. You've got to examine your own thoughts, and then you have to find a way to say, okay, is there any validity to this? That's the thing about challenging, whether it's a negative thought or positive or whatever it is. First, you want to recognize how you emotionally respond to it. Then you want to think about what your private thoughts were based on the situation. And then so the next thing is, okay, is there any benefit in me looking at this differently? Is there any truth to what was said? So what you then do is you begin to ask yourself questions you sort of want to explore. Okay, you break down what was said, or you break down the situation. Now, if you're dealing with a person one-to-one, the best thing to do is to ask for clarity. What do you really mean by that? You know, because that's the thing. We make a lot of assumptions, and then we go off on tangents, and then we find ourselves at odds with our partner or our sister or our parents, and it has been completely a misunderstanding because we've interpreted one way because how we responded. And the first thing you should always do is, let me get clarification. What do you really mean by that? Can you give me an example? You ask for clarification and you follow up and say, can you give me an example so I can have better understanding? But this is the challenge with reframing. It is not uncommon for our first response to be defensive. We get mad, we get pissed, we get angry because we don't like what was said, we don't like what was done, we don't like the situation. We've got to have enough internal strength to not have that kind of reaction. Basically, there's a level of maturity that's required. So certain relationships, whether a family, intimate, if you want real growth and development, then you have to be committed to not jumping the gun and being offended by everything you hear. So again, what you want to do is you want to look at, what is the situation? How am I emotionally responding? What are my private thoughts? And then get clarity. So you talk about tools, to me, that's the simplest way to work on reframing a situation or something that was said. But it takes commitment and it takes real interest. And if you don't care about somebody, you don't really like them, you're probably not going to reframe, you know? So you're going to do this when there's some degree of investment in the exchange. If not, you'll just go with what it is.
Okay. And I think, did you answer the last one where you said, how would we know that it's working? I mean, I'm guessing one of the things is that you see a reduction in arguments, and you would also,
I was going to say,
better communication.
Yes, improve communication and reduce conflict. And the thing is, those are things that will give you some indication of growth. But also the other thing that's internal is your own private thoughts about the situation or that person or that whatever will change. You'll find that your own thoughts are changing, and that's something that only you can assess.
That's true.
Yes. So even with reframing, there's a level of individual honesty required. You know, how much truth is there in this, and that's why I'm offended. versus, something else.
I always feel like everybody has like a little piece of the puzzle. I was thinking about when do we get time to reflect, and I feel like that's why it's so good to make time for yourself, and specifically to meditate too, to just go inside of yourself, go inside of your thoughts, and just see where your mind and your thoughts go and reflect. I think a lot of times we do not do that. That's one of the main things. And for a long time, I didn't um I didn't see the I don't say I didn't see the value, but I was not spending a lot of time with myself, and I realize now if I had done that a lot earlier on in my life, especially in my early adulthood, I would have made a lot less mistakes, a lot less ridiculous choices. And now I actually make it a priority for me to be alone.
Well, let me ask you this, if I can follow up. That's an excellent example of you recalling your own experiences. Why do you think you didn't apply that approach earlier in life?
Um, a lot of reasons. A lot of reasons. I think growing up, I was left alone a lot. So, or left to be by myself a lot with my thoughts a lot. So, anytime when I got around people, or like I got to know somebody that I really liked, I really wanted to get to know, like I wanted to be around them all the time. Or and that doesn't have to just do with a intimate relationship with a male. It just with friends, whoever. And like I was just really always like, like I've been like by myself for so long, left with my thoughts for so long. And like sometimes I think like the damage I feel like that was done in my early adulthood because I was doing that. Some like I look back and I reflect, and I'm thinking of myself when I was younger and I was spending time with myself, and I was like, wow, like why couldn't I revert to that person like during that time? Like why couldn't I find her? Like I
Mm.
like sometimes it's a weird thing. But now, but in a way I was almost forced out of it, which was great because now I was seeing a lot of the people that I was trying to hold on to want me did not want me around them, or did not want me to be what I wanted them to, what I was being to them, I guess, or what I wanted them to be to me. They were not willing to do that. So it's a theory I have on life. Like I feel like we're going to be forced no matter what. Either you make the decision. I think one of my thoughts I referred to children, and I'm probably we could speak about that next time. I referred to how parents, you either invest in your children and do it, or else like life will make the decisions for them. So I believe that
Yes.
like we always know deep down inside of us what we should be doing, but then we choose not to do it, and it's like things going to keep on happening until we do it. And this is not just on an individual level. I feel like it happens as a group. Like I think I was kind of telling you the other day about Black people, like kind of going off a little, but let's see where this goes. Like how I feel like as a race, there are things we need to be doing, and the more we don't do it, like it's like the more the universe does things, or allows things to happen so
To
that we
move
could get
in
more.
that
Yeah, it's for
direction.
us to move us in that direction, because and like it's outrageous stuff. The more time we take not to take action, the more outrageous the thing is, until we get to a point where it's like you losing lives, like literally losing lives. So now you'll need to do something yeah. But I digress.
And yeah, that's a big weight. And I see how you leapt to that. And what I would say is, while it's a little different from the primary topic, the challenge becomes in those with our people and in those areas where we are not moving, where we're not progressing, where we're not making the strides and the changes we need to make. How would you reframe someone's experience or their situation and help them see the
Mm-hmm.
benefit on their own, moving toward what they should be? So even in that situation, you can practice that in your exchanges with people. Like say you talk to someone and there's some degree of walls up, or there's a roadblock and they don't get it. You've got to be able to have the not just the communication skills, but the finesse and the connection and ability to try to reframe their experience, to give them something to look forward to that might change how they see their circumstances. So reframing works in all kinds of situations.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it works in all kinds of situations.
So could we move on to the other one now?
Yeah, of course we can.
Okay, what was it now? I think finding that balance with living with
Oh,
someone's
the different,
flaws
yeah, flaws,
and
yes.
trying to accept, not necessarily, I guess that's the word we hear a lot, accept the person's flaws. But I guess, yeah, but I think that's what throws us off, because we think once you hear accept is like you have to just take in everything, the good and the bad, and just be okay with it. But I don't think it's really that. Like, I think you have to really choose and understand what is important to you.
Yes.
Is that really important? That argument you want to win, is that really important? Does it matter if the blue dishes go in this corner of the house and I mean, I know it's sounding a little ridiculous, but we have little quirks that we sometimes feel like we cannot help. Like, for example, I was just saying recently, and I realized, reflecting, I realized, like, yeah, this is something I do a lot. I realized it's not, I don't have a need to be right. I have a need to be accurate, which is very weird. Like, I would say something like, okay, like usually I tell my husband when I get to work, or he tells me and whatever, and I'll be like, I've been here 17 minutes. Like, I wouldn't say I've been here about 20 minutes. I feel the need to say I've been here 17 minutes. I do not know why. And he say I crazy, but I just I realize, like, I do that to people too. Like, so if I hear somebody say the wrong word, like, or the wrong meaning, it's not because I'm trying to make them to it's not because I'm trying to correct them. It's just I'm trying to make it accurate so that in the future moving forward, like, if you ever have to use that word again, you use it properly, or you don't get embarrassed, or just give people as much information as possible for them to use. That, you understand?
Yeah, I do, but I will jump in and say this, that there has to be, in my personal belief as a therapist, there has to be a connection for you. Accuracy has to connect to something else for you that's important and meaningful. Accuracy by itself, standing alone, doesn't have a great value. But I believe you've attached some value to accuracy, and that's why accuracy is important to you. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, 17 minutes, 20 minutes. You've been there almost about the same time. But if you feel the need to clarify at 17, I'm just saying that I think there's some, and that doesn't mean it's bad. I'm just saying you've tied some value to being accurate.
I think it's because of what I do, like with numbers, because I deal with numbers and stuff like that, and trying to be as honest and truthful and have integrity about what I report on is probably that, I think. But I've been like that a
So
long
for
time.
you, so for you, accuracy is closely tied to integrity. I just heard you say that.
Yeah, I guess you could say that, yeah.
So if someone is not accurate, does that cause you to question their integrity?
I think so. Yes.
Okay, so let's go with this for a moment. Let's try to reframe. So, first thing I will say is that one of the things is that you've attached the value of integrity to accuracy. And so the challenge is we meet people in life who don't value the same thing we value. You know what I'm saying? That's common. So if they don't really value accuracy or see accuracy the way you see it, then that can create a point of conflict. That could be what we call a flaw. And even again, flaws, the first thing I wanted to say about flaws is that we have to recognize that even calling something a flaw is a judgment on our part, because it's something that does not fit into our construct, doesn't fit into our world and how we operate. Therefore, we see it as a flaw. But two messy people, if they find each other, they're not going to have a problem with that. If he's junky and she's junky, they're happy in their junk. It's only when you've got an OCD person tied to somebody who's junky is the junky person a flaw, versus being something something that connected us and brought us together. So I wanted to first say that we have to be very careful to realize that even when we call something a flaw, it's a judgment on our part. So we have to be careful with our judgments. But the other thing is, we have to realize that a lot of what we think and feel about flaws or differences or things are tied to what we value. And I do a lot of discussions with people, either in individual sessions or some other things, life coaching things, where I talk to people about being really clear about their core beliefs and the things that they value, because that shapes a lot of what we do. It shapes a lot of our decisions. It shapes a lot of how we interact with people, and it definitely shapes how we see folk, how we classify people. So, I mean, accuracy in your field for what you do is highly important, and it is tied to a level of integrity to your work and the authenticity and people trusting your work. But it doesn't necessarily relate the same way in a relationship. If someone is saying 20 minutes versus 17 in relationship terms, doesn't mean that they lack integrity. It just doesn't carry the same value as it does for your work. I'm just saying you got to be able to differentiate.
Okay, yeah, all right, with numbers, okay, fine. I mean, I could accept 20 minutes, okay?
Accept it, but I don't want to.
I think also, okay, in relationships, I wouldn't say accuracy. I think I would say truthfulness. Honesty is tied to integrity for me. Because if you're not honest, like I cannot go off anything you say. It's very, I don't know. I don't know. I just feel like I cannot really be easily fooled. Like, you know how people use celebrities to sell stuff to people? Like, and
Yes.
I'd be like,
it's not believable.
Yeah, like no, because I know you did this and da da da, and then I'm like, okay, so how could I believe this if you? So I don't know. I mean, I wasn't always an expert at this, but I'm glad I've gotten better because I've been fooled.
No, but and I'm gonna say this too. Sometimes truth can be subjective. I'm just saying for people, what you call truth and what someone else calls truth can be different.
Oh boy.
So, I mean, that's something you have to consider when you bring in two different people together, whether it's an intimate relationship or you and your parents or you and your girlfriends or family or work partners. People even see truth. That's why things like fact and accuracy, to me, are more kind of things that you can hinge on versus saying truth, because truth is going to vary from person to person, but facts don't vary. They don't vary.
Okay.
But you can see the benefit of reframing, right? In a situation like that, reframing and how that can help you avoid conflict.
Yeah, definitely. I do believe it is a tool. I mean, I guess I never knew the name, but now I could put a name to it. But yeah, you really do have to, because you have to really understand that we're not the same. And there's the book for this month that my book club we're reading. It's called One None and 100,000. I stopped reading like after chapter 6 because I started going off and it was too much. I think, okay, first of all, this book was written in 1935 by an Italian man. So they translated it to English. So it's like, instead of him saying like, because, he'll say, for the reason being. And I'm like, I cannot deal with this. It's like, and it's like this every sentence, like, everything just drawn out. And it's like, after I had two sentences,
you don't like the fluff of the English language, of the King's English.
I think, yeah, well, because they translated it, so whoever did it, whatever. I sure in Italian it probably sounds very easy, but the main concept of the whole thing is, or the whole book is that, like, we don't see our, and I mean it sounds very simple, but he goes really into it and takes it from different angles. The person we see and the person we think we portraying to people out there is not who they are seeing, who they are accepting. And like, we don't even know what about ourselves that the person sees that we don't even know we see about ourselves. Because the book starts off with him, with his wife telling him that his nose crooked and goes to the side. And then he's like, what? Like, I never knew that. And like, he get obsessed over it, and then he goes to his friend, and his friend's like, yeah, your nose on the side. And he's like, what? Like, and then he's like, what else do I not know? And then he uses this analogy of a mirror, and then oh, he said something so nice. Now I forget. But he said, he was saying like the person in the mirror is not living, so they do not see. It was throwing me off. So I stopped. I went to get a summary because I couldn't do it.
Well, the premise of the book that you just explained, I mean, I can see it having great value because they're right.
Yeah.
We don't see ourselves the way other people see us. And that can really go two ways. One, in that it can be beneficial for us to hear how other people see us. It can be helpful.
Yeah.
It maybe can produce change and propel us forward, but it also can do damage. Like to be told that your nose is crooked and it's sideways. Okay, so now is that something that he fixated on to the detriment of everything else in his life? So we have to take many things with a grain of salt. And again, even in this instance, reframing is important. Okay, so my nose is crooked, it's on the side. What does that really mean? How does that impact me? Does that change anything about who I am? You got to reframe stuff. But again, that reframing is going to be based on my emotional response, my visceral reaction to what is being said, what's being done, and then my thoughts about it. So how did I strongly react? What did I think about being told that my nose is crooked and to the side? And then how do I deal with that? So yeah, that book sounds interesting.
Yeah, you should check it out. I think his name is Luigi Parandillo or something like that. And another interesting thing is like even if your wife sees you a certain way and she sees character A, B, C, and X, like your best friend could see A, B, but P and F, like and it's always
People's
different little
focus.
permutations of who you are. Yeah, basically.
Yes.
But
And that's, we're all different. Yeah, I'm saying because we're all different, our focus is going to be different.
right, and the interaction you have with people will be different, and like people see parts of you, like a personality of yours is amplified to them. That part of
Yes. I
so
like how you said that amplified. We choose what is amplified. The other person doesn't. We choose that. And
yeah,
that is how we get to the point of finding issues and faults with people and labeling stuff as flaws and all of that kind of stuff because we amplify.
okay, so that's it. Any final words, Karen?
Yes, what I'd like to say is with our discussion today on reframing, I really want to share that it's really important because a shift in perspective is really important for personal progress. So it helps us to be open, willing, and receptive to seeing things differently for our own growth and development. And that is the benefit of reframing.
So that's it. Tell us what you think in the comments. Please like, comment, and subscribe. As I always say, keep your intentions pure, and bye-bye.
Bye.